journey to have visibility into the dimensions of life and society that solarpunks aim to see and that the world too often finds invisible. And whether this is in the context of consciousness of these environmental dimensions, these biodiversity dimensions, and these other dimensions of human thriving, there is a multidisciplinary integral perspective that Sara is in orchestration of. So we're going to hand over to Sara.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Please come and have a seat if you want. We're going to be running through some concepts that pick up on something Peter last night raised around, what about the people who are going to get smashed by this tidal wave of progress? And how are we going to design something that doesn't do that over and over every time there's a technological innovation? Because we are about to go into an era where technological innovation is happening constantly in huge leaps and bounds. So is that just going to crush all the people who don't have power? Is it going to destroy the environment? Or is it going to actually transcend these dilemmas that we've had? And I want to say that there was a woman here last night who chimed in on that talk, and she said, well, there are a lot of people who are getting thrown out of work by AI. What about them? So we're going to think a little bit about that, but I want to give you, hopefully, reason to know that it's not as dire as it might have seemed, and maybe we can get some ideas flowing in this creative group about what it can look like and make you aware of some of the things you may not have heard of yet that are happening, that are the manifestation of that progress curve that we would love to all be part of, if we could choose to. So my name is Sara Olsen. I've been doing work with impact management and social return on investment analysis since the late 90s. I have worked with companies, funds, startups, social enterprises, nonprofits, and all told, it's about over $10 billion worth of money that I have helped to measure the environmental and or social impact of. This experience gives me a perspective that I want to bring you guys into. So you guys probably are all doing work that considers the broader spectrum of value than just money, right? Could you guys throw out some ideas for me about what value includes beyond just the money that's in your bank account? Anybody?
Public health.
Public health. Great. Public health, absolutely. Yes.
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment. Absolutely. Personal fulfillment. Anything else? Wellness. Uh-huh. And how do you think about wellness beyond public health, personal fulfillment, anything else that matters to you in particular?
Ethics, personal ethics towards wellness.
Uh-huh, ethics. That's interesting, yeah.
One ought to be well.
Yeah, that there's something about a discipline that comes with the idea that this is how it should be. I can strive for this. There's something right about doing it this way. Any other facets of value?
Pure water.
Pure water that we can drink without getting harmed. Anything else? Biodiversity, thank you. Resilience, yeah, fantastic. How do you think about what resilience involves?
A sense that your system is prepared for not only flourishing in the moment and current abundance, but that you have some level of preparation and ability to face challenges, whether personal hardships or actual physical storms and physical challenges.
Yeah, all right. So resilience in the face of duress and the ability to bounce back. I've even heard of people saying there's also a concept called anti-fragility that is maybe something that resonates with audiences who don't typically find themselves in this room, that's similar. And it's the idea that you can bounce back from hardship even stronger, not even just the same, but more thriving because of the hardship even almost. Great. So, do these things get measured by the Dow Jones Industrial Average?
No.
Who said what? Do they get measured by the current Dow Jones Industrial Average?
No.
Like when you look at your share price of your stock, is it measuring that stuff?
No.
I can't hear you.
No.
What did you say?
No.
No. No, it's not. It's not. Do you know that financial accounting got codified in a textbook for the first time in history 1 year after who landed in San Salvador? Columbus. That was in 1493. That's when they invented double entry bookkeeping and wrote it down in the first ever textbook. Has that changed very much? No. No, it has not. Did it think about the wellness of the environmental commons? Did it think about your personal fulfillment? No. It was really kind of just writing down a system that thought about both sides of the equation in terms of, are you getting something and are you giving something out? So it just started to think about the idea that there are two perspectives, yours and the other party's, whoever it is. But it did not think about the environment. I mean, that would have seemed absurd back then. You know, why would anyone think about the environment and its resilience? And why would anybody think about your own well-being? That's crazy. I mean, like when you think about it, slavery, I don't know exactly when it started in the United States, but I think it was 200 years later than double entry bookkeeping got founded. Slavery. So we were like really, really far away from an idea where everybody matters. And we have not baked that into the way we account for things. So, who decides what is of value today in our economy?
Investors.
Mostly investors. How can they tell?
They have some measurements and they do a lot of guessing.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. They are kind of estimating. It doesn't look like they're estimating, though, because it's in money. It's in numbers, which have, like, precision. But it can be precisely wrong, right, instead of roughly right. And that's what we're going to talk about, because we've got to get comfortable with the idea that there's a way of assessing some of these harder-to-measure things that may not be precisely right down to this last little digit of certainty. But it is more right than what we've got going on now in terms of those things. Maybe. But it's kind of messy. So right now, a lot of times it's the owner of the capital, the owner of the equity. That's who's getting recorded in the legal contracts, in the accounting, and that's who decides a lot of things because that's who has power. And money is power in this economy, and interestingly, now increasingly, attention is the currency. So attention is power. So it's very, very complicated about who decides, but I want to suggest that there is a way to quantify that other stuff, even in money terms, if you needed to talk to people who only think in money terms, and that might be a wormhole that we can not only go through to show the value of these other things that matter to those who think in money terms, we can pull them in to a conversation about, not just a conversation, a relationship with the people and the things that are being affected by what they are doing. And it's through monetary valuation, which scares some people, but you know what? If we don't do it, then they don't see it at all. And if we don't publish it, then AI doesn't know it exists. And right now, one thing that kind of keeps me up is that AI is sucking all the information from the world that's been published on the internet, and much of that is driven by the idea that for-profit, short-term profit maximization is what matters. And all the things you said are valuable to you besides just what's in your bank account don't really show up right now on the internet. in any kind of quantitative, digitized way very easily, do they? So what are we doing about that? I think we can do something very big and exciting, and I think it's already happening. It's just been a little hard to see it. So hopefully we can learn how to see it. So if you are going to think about a given investment or a given enterprise's activities or a given product and how it's made, you might want to think about, okay, what's the scope of the analysis that I'm going to undertake to understand what the social and environmental value that's being created is? Is it this year, like the year to come? Is it the whole company's operations? Or is it just this one product? Or is it this one program that they have? Decide what that scope of analysis is, and the time frame over which you want to analyze it, and figure out who are all of the parties, all of the who are being affected by, or who affect that, what's going on. Who's affected by it, not just in their bank account, but who is affected by it in their life in some way. And it might include also those who can't speak, the environment being the obvious one. Then we want to figure out what changes for them and how important is that to them. So we want to figure out the answers to those questions, and how do we do that? We do that by talking to them. So I want to ask you guys if you could give me a little instance of some entity, and we're going to see if we can just quickly do an illustration of how this works. And if we can't think of something quickly that I think could work, that I could handle in this format, then I will make one up for you, okay? Anybody have an instance of something that's an intervention or something that's kind of a thing that affected people, whether for good or bad, that we could use as an example? Yes?
Large dams.
Large dams. Can you think of one in particular?
I mean, what came to mind when you were talking about the stakeholders was, for instance, like the removal of the dams in the Northwest that facilitated the movement of salmon again.
Okay.
So it was just that there was like energy being produced by this dam. It was impacting.
This is a really good example. Thank you very much. What is your name?
I'm Sara Corbett.
Sara Corbett. All right. Sara Corbett has suggested that we use the example of a dam. If you'll bear with me, I will bring something in that maybe everyone is equally unfamiliar with, but everybody knows what a dam is, right? You know, you block a flow of water and it builds up a lot of reserves. In Bhutan, they are building a mindfulness city, and they want to create a big dam because hydroelectric power is something that they have as a natural asset because they're uphill from India. And India has a lot of people who need electricity, so it can be a win-win. They're going to build the dam. They're going to create a beautiful architectural feature of the dam face itself that is designed to be like a Buddhist temple inside. It's going to be awesome. If you go online to Bhutan Mindfulness City, you'll see a beautiful visualization of this. And so we want to just all imagine that we are people in Bhutan, wherever, and we want to think about how might the dam's construction and operation over the next 10 years affect us. Okay? We're just going to imagine this. So does anybody, and actually my colleague Chris G right back here, could you guys give him a warm round of applause? He's going to come up and help me for a minute. All right. Thank you very much, Chris. He doesn't know what he's going to do, but he's an architect and knows how to draw. So, all right. So what are the ways that you all who are Bhutanese citizens are affected by this dam's construction and operation for the next 10 years, let's say? Just imagine yourself in this situation. And Chris, what you're going to do is on each card, you're going to try to capture what they say as an outcome of what changes for them as a result of this dam being there or being built.
Wow.
Okay?
So
And no pressure, it's like Pictionary. I will help to articulate what the outcome is once somebody says it, and if you can make a picture that represents that. Okay?
just use a very meta Pictionary.
No pressure. Okay, it doesn't have to be pretty or good in any way.
Not gonna be.
Okay, it just has to be recognizable that that's what it is, and you can write the words also. Okay?
About that.
All right, thank you very much for
Yeah.
your spirit. All right, so did anybody have a thought about like what has changed for you in your life or what will change in the next 10 years as a result of this dam being constructed and operating?
Stewardship.
Yes, sir.
Extinction.
Extinction. Whose extinction?
The fish downstream.
Okay, the fish downstream
Got it.
are dead.
Okay.
All right, are they permanently dead or just for 10 years?
Possibly permanent.
Possibly permanently. Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Accessible clean water.
Accessible clean water. Okay, accessible for,
Hopefully the people in the town.
okay, yeah, hopefully in the mindfulness city, they'll have clean water that they can use. Thank you.
So wait, what was that one?
Okay, so we've got dead fish
Got dead fish.
and we've got clean water for the citizens.
Oh wow, and clean water on the same page.
No, different pages, one card for each
Got it.
outcome.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
I thought of stewardship. I thought of like young people having jobs.
Uh-huh.
So skill building.
Skill
So that
building.
We're working on something now that makes us leaders for the future.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't know how to put that in a card. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a wonderful and important idea. Like workforce development. That means what exactly? 15?
You want me to say no?
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Patrick. All right, so people gaining skills.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Keep
This
going.
is not
Just-
easy.
Let's just do this.
Okay, and Sarah, did you have one?
Is there anyone living in front of the dam that would get flooded?
I don't know. Maybe let's say yes.
Okay.
That there might be a few.
So there may be a relocation of inhabitants
Mhm.
upstream
Mhm.
where the dam is going to be flooded.
Okay. Yeah, so there may be, and it's pretty rural. Not too many people live there, but a few people will have to move from where they've lived for generations. Yeah. Okay, so dislocation
Dislocation.
or relocation
Relocation.
to live somewhere else.
So displacement.
Yeah, displacement is a good word. And if you want, you can write the word on the card on the back of it or something.
I
Just
don't know.
yeah.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Well, I was going sort of on that same, but there's the ecosystem that is going to be flooded.
The ecosystem.
That's behind the dam will be
Yeah.
flooded, and so there's an ecosystem change
Yes.
as well.
Okay. So also ecosystem. Can you be a little bit more like concrete about what that might involve?
So,
Loss of habitats.
yeah, so, I mean, it's basically flooding of the valley behind, so.
Right.
So you have to, all the plants and animals that live there will have to also be relocated.
Yes. Okay.
So, or change, or they will have to just move out on their own.
Yeah. Total guessing, but like just guessing that it's similar to a place that you know. Like, what's a particular species who might be affected by that? Do you think?
I would say if it's Bhutan, like mountain goats.
Okay. All right. So the
Sure.
goats gotta go away to somewhere else.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. Species like goats having to relocate also, not just people.
You were asking what's the impact on the people too? Is like
Yeah.
so they will have a new place of worship in the dam. They'll have
Yeah.
There might be increased tourism
Mm-hmm.
that where people visit Bhutan specifically to experience this dam.
Yes.
And I imagine all of that will also increase employment
Mhm.
in the new city
Yes.
that's being built.
Okay. So those are three.
Wow.
Speed drag. Okay, and then we'll wrap it up unless anyone has really like got a strong
Give it to me
thing
again.
you want.
Sorry, I was-
Okay, so we've got increased spiritual spaces. Is that a fair?
Yeah, you said that there's going to be a place of worship
Mhm.
in the bridge.
Yes. In the dam itself.
In the dam.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's like a new place to experience
Mhm.
one's relationship with God or the universe,
Mhm.
and then increased tourism because there are probably going to be people that come
Yep.
specifically for the dam and the new city that's being built, and then employment from more money coming to Bhutan.
Yeah, so more spiritual seekers having a space for reflection and connection to the higher life in the world. Tourism, more tourism. And more economic thriving in this area and maybe in the country overall. Okay, so let's give Chris just another minute or two. And the next step in this process, after you've done this with the people, so first of all, you figure out who is affected by whatever it is that's happening, right? You want to talk to a lot of people to find out how they're affected. Do they know anyone else who's affected? Talk to scientists and others who understand the ecological ramifications. Maybe talk to religious figures who would understand something more about the spiritual aspect of this. Once you've mapped out who are all the parties that are affected, you want to talk to them in groups about how are you affected. What's good for you? What's bad for you? And list all of those outcomes out, much the way we have just done. You would like, ideally, to do this with the groups of people until you stop hearing new things from particular groups. So you do it to exhaustion, as they call it. And then what you've done is you've been able to map out the different people who are experiencing different outcomes. And sometimes you might say, oh, well, there's workers as a group, but it might be that there's a subset of workers who are affected in a different way than a different subset. Those would be two different groups, two different stakeholder subgroups. So once you've mapped out all the different outcomes, the next step is what we're going to do with these nuts. And I need a couple of volunteers, 2 volunteers if I could have. Anybody want to get involved? Yes, sir? And Patrick. All right.
Volunteer.
Okay, so I have no idea how many nuts there are here, but let's imagine there's 100 nuts. All right, and each of you gets 100 nuts. Divide this in half, okay? So you each get half of the bowl. This is a bowl of nuts. And we're going to say that each of them has 100 nuts without having to actually count, but really you would. What we're going to do is valuation of these outcomes. This is also known in development work as participatory impact assessment. And so what we want to do is get the different, it's okay, you can keep it in the bowl. He's doing a good job holding it. So, so what we're going to ask is that, okay, you imagine that these represent how important the outcome is to you personally. And you want to allocate these nuts against these different outcomes according to how important each outcome is to you. So the more nuts there are, the more important it is to you. The less nuts, the less important. And the fact that you're giving away all of your 100 nuts gives us a sense of like the proportional importance of this, okay? So Chris, how are you doing with those drawings?
I guess I got them.
Okay.
I mean, they're perfect.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
They're exactly what we
They're
need.
exactly
Thank
what
you.
need.
So would you please put these on the floor if you guys don't mind bending down?
Well, I was going to say, we could do it on a table.
We could if we had more time,
All
but
right, I have a table right behind you. I can pop that up.
well, but your hands are tied, right?
Can you hold my nuts for me, please?
Big pleasure.
All right, so does anybody have any questions while they're setting up? Real quick.
Is this what you, is this part of what you do?
This is part of the technique of social return on investment analysis, yes, and we do this, and many other people do this as well. There is a way of doing what's called SROI analysis that doesn't require talking to any stakeholders. And you can just sit at your desk and Google economic studies that say how valuable is a dam from an ecological point of view or from a local economic point of view. You can do it that way, but a better way to do it is to talk to the people who are actually affected. and go into the local area and like survey the ecological ramifications. So that's what we're trying to illustrate here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Mhm.
We've done something like this with scenario planning. I'm gonna guess, since we're doing this, that we're saying like, this is negative, so the number of nuts is how important it is.
Right,
But
so-
we're gonna take that it's negative.
Yeah.
What about events, things in which there's both a positive and a negative on the same effect? Would you split the,
Those would be two different outcomes,
Yeah,
right?
so
So
we'd have two
technically, yeah, we might want to cut that one in half, actually.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'm just wondering,
Yeah, and you know what we could do is separate the negative ones for a minute from the positive ones. So can you see what's negative about this?
Displacement of species?
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I combined the people and the species because it was about displacement.
Okay, so these are both displacement.
Yeah.
Both of those would be a negative, presumably. We would want to talk to people who would be displaced to find out. Maybe they wanted to go somewhere else, but
Tourism, economic development.
That's good.
If combating non-natives or displacing the non-natives to allow the natives to thrive.
right? There's good and bad to many things, it turns out. Okay, so right now what we're going to do is start with the positives here.
Yep.
Can you sort of tell us what you see there?
So we got clean water, clean H2O, and sparkling glass. I think it's very important to me.
I think it gets the cashews, yeah.
Clean water is definitely a plus to have in a city, a new city. Wow.
I'm dropping some nuts.
It's like an auction.
Okay. What else do you see here?
So
Just
we
to
also
read for
have
the audience.
workforce development, which is a pedagogue teaching a student aboard at a desk. So I think skills-based workforce development is very important.
Okay. Got a lot of nuts going on there.
Our next one is an exponential curve of heightened spirituality. We're going to the clouds, y'all.
Uh-huh.
Pretty important.
Okay. And you can imagine that different people will value these things differently, right? So you do this with your different stakeholder subgroups who you've already identified are experiencing similar
Pretend to be
things.
Buddhist.
Uh-huh. Okay. And what else do you see here?
This is tourism, so it's there we go, a cluster mapping of all the different types of tourism.
Okay, so how are you personally valuing
So-
the tourism boost?
I'm not a huge fan of tourism. However, as part of more types of economic, what's the last word?
Economic development.
Development,
Yeah.
I'd give it some nuts.
Okay, we're going to have some nuts on the tourism.
Because tourism could be a function of.
Yeah, so these are, most of my nuts went to the clean water, because everything's relative.
Okay. And you know, each one of you might see this a little differently. I see that generally there are similar amounts of nuts on both of them. So you guys seem to be from a similar stakeholder group because your outcomes look like they are, we're just grouping the outcomes that you experience, we're assuming. And it turns out that not only have you both experienced similar outcomes, but you also value them in similar ways. If you guys want to stand up and just come and look at this for a second, because it's just kind of fun to see what it looks like, I think. Yes?
In this case, though, they're also coming from the perspective, like, economic development would be different from their perspective than for the people in Bhutan, where, like, children are leaving, but because there's no jobs.
Yes.
So for them, economic development is also family,
Right.
unity, and staying in their place.
So yes, this is a really important point. Do you want to say that again if I over here?
I was just saying that there are things connected to these points. So like in Bhutan, a lot of the youth are leaving because there are no jobs. So they're leaving their families, they're leaving their country because there's no jobs for them. And so economic development isn't just like, yay, we have a job. It's like I get to stay in the place where I was born and where my family resides. So it has like there are fewer other options, and what's happening in the city is providing options for people to actually continue to be in the place that they love.
Yeah, hopefully so. Yeah, it's true that the population has been drifting off who are educated. They go to Australia mostly to get jobs. Okay, thank you very much. And now, what about these negatives? Take all of your nuts back.
All of them?
Yeah, because each of you thankfully separated your nuts into your own pile, which is very smart of you to do. And what I want you to do is now allocate the dead fish problem, the species displacement upstream, and the population who had to leave and go somewhere else. Tell me how relatively important you find each of those problem areas, which is the negative stuff, relative to your 100 nuts.
Well, I'm putting the people, more votes on the people than the fish, even though the ecologist part of me knows that if you kill the fish, the people are gonna be in trouble. But I mean, you know, I'm thinking like a voter. If we would have, I'm thinking like the people who come to my workshop. We're very focused on the now.
All right, thank you. Okay, and we've got like a huge number of nuts on the people displacement, and similar looks like parts of nuts on fish downstream and upstream biodiversity effects. All right, thank you both very much. Give a round of applause to our wonderful volunteers. And a round of applause to our artists. All right, you guys can all relax now. Thank you very much. Okay, so you can imagine that once you've counted up how many out of that 100 did you have on each of these outcomes, then you can anchor that onto one of those outcomes for which you know a monetary value that is credible. Okay? This is similar to how Nike figures out how much they can charge for their shoes. Go with me on that. We could, if we had another few hours, we could talk more about the technique of this, and I encourage you to learn more about that. I'd be happy to tell you where you could learn more. But there's a way of translating the beans or the nuts that you may have allocated into monetary terms based on anchoring. The simplest way is based on anchoring on one of the outcomes that you know the monetary value of in a way that the society has deemed believable. Okay? And that's not to say that that's what it's worth in price terms. That's how important it is. Because at the end of the day, price in dollars for us all is a reflection of importance, according to how society has thought about it. Okay? So what we're trying to figure out is how important are these outcomes to these people who are concerned with it or who experience it, is the way technically to do it. And then translate that level of importance into monetary terms so that you can show it to people who think in monetary terms and have a conversation about them. Okay? And what that will give you is a way to show it that you can talk about, like ROI, return on investment. This is very tiny. I don't know how to zoom this in. Maybe Patrick, thank you. You should, right on. So what we're doing here is we're saying that this is a flow diagram, a Sankey diagram of an intervention, and the different colors of bands are the different people, different stakeholder groups. But if we go down into this lower left-hand corner, or upper left-hand corner on the slide, if there's a way to do it, you might need to step out of, yeah, there we go, you're amazing. Okay, so can you guys see? This is not easy. It's $1 invested gets you $21.50 worth of social value for this particular intervention. You can just imagine that it's the one we were just talking about. And if you go here, these bands are the different stakeholder groups who are experiencing something, and the size of the color band is how important it is to all of them. And you can imagine that there's ways of showing both the positives above a line of 0, let's say, not important at all, and then it can go into negative territory. Was there a negative impact, and how important was that? This happens to be from an intervention with people who are usually totally invisible to most of us in society, inmates in prison who are never getting released. And this was from a program that helped them build their citizenship skills, their ability to be a good citizen, which is an interesting kind of program in a place where people are never going to be back in the regular society. But what we found is that improved family relationships was the most important thing to them, to your point,
that people who don't have to leave to go to get a job somewhere else might find that to be very important indeed. Okay, so this is where you can show it in a kind of, what I think of as kind of a solar punk kind of way. And you can show it in a Wall Street kind of way. And you can imagine that there's a lot of questions that this would raise, like how did you come up with that, you know? So that's what we just tried to work through. This one, I know you cannot see, it's too tiny, but if you zoom out, I'll just explain sort of roughly what we're seeing here. This is an analysis that we did for a chatbot company. It's a publicly traded 1,500-person company. And they wanted to know who are all the parties who are investing something of value in our diversity, equity, and inclusion program. And then who all is being affected and how important is it to them. So if we scan over to the far right, up here, this is just the outcomes that have been translated into monetary value by different outcomes. And so for end customers, there's a lot of value being created. That the company includes traditionally excluded communities is something that matters for the customers. The legal team feel that this has value to them and they can monetize that in fairly traditional economic terms. But there's also product teams who find that there's like less time reworking product because they don't have to be as confused about what people with accessibility issues need, because they have people with accessibility issues designing the product. And then if we go all the way down, there were some things that were not able to be translated into monetary value equivalent. You're very good at this on the fly. It's just these things that didn't get a monetary value, but that we acknowledge happened also, right? So this is just to say that this is being done in a lot of places now. If you go to the next slide, or I can go to it now. Yeah, this is just another way, thank you very much, Patrick. Another way of representing this with different stakeholder groups from a set of startup enterprise situations in Kenya, in communities that have suffered a lot of violence and economic upheaval. These were peace-building projects that included economic development. You can show how confident are you. So there's an estimated value that might be on the lower end or on the higher end, because you know these are not dollars that somebody like counts and you know exactly how many there were. So this is just to say that there's ways of thinking about this stuff that can be quantified, and I wanted to just leave you with some ideas about the fact that this is something that's happening all over the place. So 25 years ago or so, people in San Francisco who were working with homeless populations using businesses to provide supportive work environments, get people back on their feet skills-wise and also monetarily, needed a way to account for the value that they were creating that wasn't just the profit, because they were not returning a profit to the investor. That methodology got written up. It got to be the anchor of a network that was incorporated when the UK government said you have to do a social return on investment analysis and get, according to a standardized methodology, and have it assured that it meets that methodology in 2007. So now that network has chapters in 29 countries around the world, about 3,000 members. I'm a director, I'm a member of the board of directors, I should admit that. And there's people who've been trained in this methodology so that we're doing it in a way that's consistent and credible and assurable. If you wanted to get it audited, you could have an assurance review to show that you've done it the right way. So that's all happening, but there's also something called the International Foundation for Valuing Impacts, which does something like this, except they do it more from a desk-based, okay, let's just get a bunch of smart people in a room to decide ahead of time what's the credible way from an economics point of view to value something, and then we'll just plug those values in. We won't actually talk to the people who are affected. But that way is a little more comfortable for Wall Street people right now. But that group, IFVI, is trying to build a bridge into the mainstream capital markets to be able to show what the environmental and social value is of any investment in theory or any company's activities. So these things are happening at a scale, and that was developed with Harvard, the big four accounting firms, and it's a way of trying to equip investors of all kinds with information about this stuff that's invisible. So there's a really long way to go. But if you imagine that AI could help reduce the cost of doing that, going out and talking to people, it won't ever replace the ability to make that connection and in-person relationship that's very valuable to do. So there's pluses and minuses of having ways of reducing the cost of doing this. But you could think about the fact that all of Wall Street could be informed by this kind of analysis in the not too distant future. So let me leave it there. And I had put a thing together. I've been talking about capitalism judo for a really long time, and I just today made a Substack so that we could be connected in this conversation. So please help me by informing me what you think about all of this. And thank you very much. Happy to have a couple of questions, and then we're going to hand it over to our next amazing speaker. Thank you.
I just wanted to hyper thank Sara for sharing, because if we're going to have a context in which we're living right now in a capitalist context, that we need to find ways to solarpunkify that, and regenerative capitalism and awareness of how we can do so is so important. And I just wanted to thank Sara on behalf of all folks gathered.